running in the same Democrat primary as Mr. Dell. And yes, he's running for Orangetown Town Council in the Democrat primary. And
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming. And could you just take a few minutes to tell us about yourself, why you're running, and whatever else you would like us to know.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. My name is Elijah Reichlin-Melnick, and as she said, running in a Democratic primary in the town of Orangetown this year, along with Robert Dell. We are the two candidates who are endorsed this time to run in the Democratic primary. And I'm sorry for being late. I was actually out talking to voters in Pearl River this evening, and it's now a pleasure to be here talking to all of you. So a little bit about myself, and so I didn't see how all the other candidates did. I'm a lifelong Orangetown resident, born and raised in Nyack, a graduate of the Nyack High School, and I'm a former elementary school teacher. I used to teach first grade and third grade, and so when you've dealt with 24 6-year-olds, I'm hoping I'll be able to deal with a few other people on the town council. I'm running this year because I think that we really have a lot of work to do in Orangetown. Here in Orangetown, I mean, I don't know how many of you are Orangetown, how many of you are Clarkstown, but I'm proud of the quality of life that we have in Orangetown. I think it's a very special place to live because we've got great downtown areas. I was in Pearl River today, and we've got Pearl River, which is a wonderful small town. We've got Nyack, we've got Piermont, we have Tatan, we have Blauvelt. We have all of these areas in Orangetown, which I think the town council has to do a better job of protecting and supporting. Local business is really what makes our town. We've seen the problem with the Pfizer plant right now in Orangetown. What happens if you have one business that takes up too much of the tax base? I think that the town council has to be there in order to grow local business and support it in whatever way possible. So whether that's easing up on parking restrictions, whether that's finding a way to streamline the process for getting new businesses into the town. Right now I know there's a concern down on Route 303 with a Stop and Shop center there, which people are dragging their heels on. You may have heard from some of the other candidates this evening. I don't know if anybody else brought that up, but if you're in Orangetown, this is something which the town board has really not been proactive on. There is a potential to build a new Stop and Shop center there, which will bring in tax revenue to the town, and right now the current town board is really dragging their heels on that. And this to me is incomprehensible. We have a duty, if we're going to be in public office, to be working to bring in ratables to our towns in order to improve our quality of life and to cut down on our tax burden. So for me, that's something which motivates me very strongly. The other thing which I think we have to focus on as a town is opening up government to the people. If you have a concern, whether it's about your neighbor next door who's not following town codes, if it's about anything you may have, you should be able to come to any of your townwide elected officials, from supervisor to council, express your concerns, and really try to be able to have them heard. I'm somebody, my job currently is as a caseworker in our local congressional office in West Nyack. So 5 days a week, 9 to 5, people come to me, and my job is to work with them to solve their problem, whether it's with the IRS, with Medicare, with Social Security, with the Veterans Administration. People ask me for help, and it's my job to help them. That's the attitude which I'd like to bring to the town council, and I think that's what you need in government, especially at the local level, where government is so close to the people. And finally, I think that the town council, especially in Orangetown, has to focus on making sure the development that does take place is smart development, that we aren't ramming things through. If there's community opposition to something, that we aren't building up housing to a density that the community can't support and the schools can't support and the infrastructure can't support. This is something the town has to look extremely careful at. So make sure that anything that goes in does so with the support of the community at large. That's a bit of my background. I'd be delighted to hear from you all if there's specific questions you have about me, about the race, about Orangetown, and anything else that's on your mind.
Did you work in the office of Engel?
I do. I did, and I do for the last 3 years. I've been in West Nyack, just around the corner here, helping folks. Anybody else have any questions about the council election this year?
How do you
Sure.
How would you go about attracting new business? And speaking of Pearl River,
Sure. Yep.
A lot of businesses have closed there.
I know. I think the town needs to be reaching out and marketing to potential investors in the business community here, marketing what we have that makes this a great place to do business. Compared to some of the other towns in Rockland, Orangetown does have a lower tax rate. It's still too high, but it is better than Clarkstown. It's better than Haverstraw and Ramapo at this point. I think that needs to be something that we market and make sure that businesses realize this is a great place to locate. I think also if you're talking the small businesses that really make up the core of the downtown areas, I think that we have to focus on talking about the kind of the kind of customers that we have here. We have a lot of people living right close to the downtown areas, which many other suburban communities don't have. There's a lot of areas in Rockland and in Westchester and in Bergen County that are nothing but strip mall development. And I think that Orangetown really has something different that we can offer. We do have these downtown centers which are walkable. It's great for pedestrians who want to come. You don't just have to drive everywhere you're going. And I think that businesses, especially if you're opening a restaurant, if you're opening a local shop, this is something which appeals to people because this is not what you find in every suburban community in the New York area. We do have something different to offer, and I think the town needs to be clear about that. To anybody that's thinking of locating and setting up shop here, really marketing what makes us great. We also have good school systems in Orangetown, thank goodness. And I think we need to, even though the town is not going to be directly working on that, that's something, if you're a business and you want to have your employees pick up and move here, that's going to be very important to any business. If they have to sell their employees on a move, talking about the quality of the school systems which we have in Pearl River, in South Orangetown, in Nanuet, and in Nyack. So that's, I don't know if that answers the question, but those are my thoughts.
Now,
Let me admit, first of all,
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm not an Orangetown resident.
Sure, that's all right.
And this is more of a generic question for anybody running for office for any of the towns. How much of Orangetown's problems, or Clarkstown's problems, or Ramapo's problems, or Rockland County's problems are generated by the state and the federal government and leaving you with good intentions and well-meaning, don't
Sure.
misunderstand me
That's
here.
okay.
But with a fairly narrow range of options because you're locked into a whole lot of other things. We've lost 1.6 million people in New York State since the year 2000.
Yep.
Those are businesses, taxpayers,
Yep.
etc. All right? It is the highest out-migration of any state in the country. What, realistically, how can you deal with all of that?
Sure. I mean, I think you're absolutely correct, especially when it comes to the issue of contract negotiations. New York law locks towns into a really poor bargaining position. I'm sure you may be familiar. The Taylor Law is one, and all of these laws governing particularly public employee unions, it does make it somewhat difficult for towns because the way that it's set up is contracts continue as is. If you don't come to an agreement, then the existing contract comes up and the binding arbitration comes into play too. I know Clarkstown was dealing with this recently where the arbitrator awarded the police contract a 3.5% retroactive raise for the last 2 years. And this is a concern. So I think as a town official, you have to do the best you can with the cards you're dealt from the state. You have to lobby the state representatives in our area for Orangetown, Senator Carlucci, Assemblyman Jaffe, talk to the governor and try to change these laws because it does make it very difficult. That said, I think the town, we're going to be living within a 2% tax cap because this is what's gone through at the state level, and so the town has to be finding ways to make that work out. I mean, there's no other options. Whatever your thoughts were on the tax cap going forward, and I've talked to voters in Orangetown that strongly support and strongly oppose it, whatever your thoughts were, that's state law at this point. So we do have to work within that law and find a way to get the budget in at 2% or less. I mean, and certainly the goal would not be a 2% raise every year. It would be, no raise or a cut if possible. The question and the concern always comes up for the towns, though, if you have mandatory costs, if you have health care costs and energy costs that are going up at faster than the rate of inflation, something else has to give. And so the role for the town officials is to review all of the options and find a way to make a cut, if you have to, that's not going to hurt the residents that live in the town. So that's where, even though we're living within the means that the state give us and the laws that the state has given us, that's where I think the discretion of the town-wide officials really can come into play. Okay. So, did you have a question?
You had mentioned earlier the Stop and Shop project.
Yes.
That